Shalom, this is Reb Yoseph coming to you from the land of Israel. This week is Chol HaMoed Pesach. Shabbos is Chol HaMoed, and we depart from the regular reading of the Torah to read a special parsha, but I would like to focus in on the Haftorah, which is from the book of Yahushua, fifth parak, more or less, and it deals with the first Pesach that the children of Israel performed in the land of Israel. And the story is that the Bnei Yisrael crossed into Israel. The Jordan basically splits, much like the Red Sea does. They pass through on dry land, and then they come onto the land, and they are told that they must undergo circumcision because they haven't been practicing circumcision the 40 years that they have been shall we say, exiled in the desert. The idea is that one is not permitted to circumcise a son if there is a material chance that they will be traveling within the next few days. And being that the children of Israel were following the pillar of Hashem, they did not practice circumcision during the time they were in the desert. And now they're going to stay put. They have more control of their destiny, so they are to be circumcised. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says after they have been circumcised that he has removed the taunt of Egypt from them. Now, the idea of the taunt from Egypt, herpa, is the word that's actually used. And there are two explanations of it. One is that the idea of being uncircumcised is considered an insult. You have the story of Shimon and Levi tricking Shem into being circumcised when he wants to basically hold Dinah after he has kidnapped her. That's basically the basic idea. Indeed, they say it's a taunt. The idea of someone being circumcised is an idea of refinement. The Ralbag discusses and says that really Avraham was not fitting to bequeath or to receive the land of Israel as a Yerusha, as an inheritance, as a heritage, until he was circumcised. The commandment for him to circumcise himself comes immediately before the birth of Yitzchak. In fact, the birth of Yitzchak is heralded at the time. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says that within a year you'll have a child, but you must circumcise yourself now. And God also says to Abraham that you will inherit the land of Israel in connection with this. The idea of circumcision is an aspect of refinement. Moshe Rabbeinu talks about that the children of Israel should circumcise their heart. The idea of the foreskin is that it's thick and it makes a person unfeeling generally, but at times they're excessively sensitive. It's associated with the idea that the people who are uncircumcised are basically savages. And the insult of Egypt is the Egyptians were not circumcised. They were also extremely immoral. The idea is that being that the Israelites were not circumcised, they were as bad as the Egyptians. It's playing with the word chirpah. There is another aspect of it where Pharaoh, it doesn't use the word chirpah, but he taunts the Bnei Yisrael, saying when they are asked that they be allowed to go into the desert, he says, "You're going to die in the desert. I see bad before you." In Moshe Rabbeinu later on says when he's pleading for the children of Israel, the nation, he says that why should Egypt say that you took your people out into the desert to kill them? So these are the aspects of a taunt. The second one, the answer to it is that once the nation has reached the Holy Land, that's their destination, it is clear they are not going to die in the desert. As a result of that, the Pharaoh's taunt becomes a hollow one. Then at that point, the children of Israel are commanded to bring the sacrifice for Pesach, to observe Pesach. Now, in order to observe Pesach, a man must be circumcised, as well as all of the men in his household. If someone is not circumcised, they cannot observe Pesach. They cannot essentially partake of the Korban Pesach. That's the sacrificial dinner, but it also includes telling the story of Pesach, telling the story of the Exodus from Egypt. Or if he has been delinquent in circumcising the men in his household, both his sons or his servants. The basic idea of circumcision is that it means that the person has become refined. However, it's the type of thing that it takes some subtlety and maturity for a person to appreciate. So, as a result of that, the idea is a central metaphor of Pesach is freedom. Okay, you're celebrating freedom. Okay, the coming into Israel or into the Holy Land is that they are getting their own land. There are a number of aspects of this. One of them is that if a nation doesn't have a land, or if it's in exile from its land, it really is not free. So as a result, when the Bnei Yisrael came into Eretz Yisrael, they had achieved true freedom, or a higher aspect of freedom. There is also an aspect that a person must be fitting for freedom, that if you're dealing with savages, they really aren't fit for freedom. Therefore, it's not appropriate for them to observe a celebration of freedom, that's Pesach. What happens after that is that the manna is exhausted and the people start eating of the produce of the land. Now, the idea of manna is the idea of mother's milk and infancy. While Israel was in the desert, they were in their infancy. As a result, they got food they did not have to work for. It was given to them effortlessly. When you're going to start talking about bread is a civilized food. You have to actually raise the grain, and you have to then refine it into flour, then you have to bake it into bread. So as a result of that, you must deal with the real world, and you must put a certain amount of your own labors in. A person must be intelligent, and they must have an ordered society in order to be eating bread, as opposed to manna. You can still be somewhat unruly and wild. It rains down from heaven, and all you have to do is pick it. So the idea of eating bread is the idea of coming of age. It's also discussed in the Gemara that a child is wiser when he is able to eat bread. It's considered a candidate to be one of the fruits of the fruit of knowledge, because what do you see with it? That the child has grown up a bit. He starts talking a little bit when he can start eating bread. They come at the same time. So in other words, Israel has made its entrance into the family of nations at this point. That is an aspect of the ending of the manna and the eating of the grains of the land. After that, Yoshua encounters an angel that has its sword drawn. And he asks, "Are you friend or foe?" And the angel tells him that he should remove his shoes because he's standing on holy ground. And Yoshua does that. The end of the story. And it comes immediately after the Pesach. It's part of the same chapter in the Nach. The Ralbag discusses this, and he says that the reason that Yoshua saw the angel in military accoutrements was because he was about to attack Jericho, and this is what was on his mind. So that's how the angel appeared to him. The reply of the angel is that he's on Eretz HaKodesh. And this is a counterbalance to the idea of eating fruits of the land. When a person is engaged in the production of crops, they are engaged in war, it's possible for them to think that really anything goes. And the idea of religion is that one of standards from heaven. And what the angel is saying is that a number of things is that one must turn to these mitzvahs in order for you to be successful, whether it's going to be in guns or in butter. The other aspect of the angel being with its sword drawn is that the battle for freedom is going to be a long one. The idea of the Jewish holidays and even the Jews themselves, at times the Jews are called Eidim, literally witnesses, that they are supposed to be witnesses to certain ideas. The word advocate would be the one more appropriate to translate it into English, that the Jews are supposed to, in the case of Pesach, be wise in the ideas of freedom, and to be advancing it. However, it's going to be something that's going to be an aspect of warfare. It might be physical warfare. It might be ideological warfare. It's going to take a person's intellect. It's going to also take a degree of commitment. They are going to have to appreciate that value. And it's the idea of being a holy warrior. Our brothers Ishmael have a very good word for it. It's Mujahidin. Comes from the word jihad. A jihad is a holy war. And they will explain that what it means is that a person must put their entire being into that war. That is what a mujahidin is. And it must be imbued with sanctity. They must think that, or be carrying out the will of heaven on earth, that they are fighting in God's battles. They are soldiers of the King of the universe. That's a mujahidin. And what the story in Yehoshua is telling us is that the battle for freedom is going to be a long one. It's going to be a hard one. But in the end, it will lead to the perfection of man and the kingdom of heaven on earth. Thank you. Shabbat Shalom.